Finneran is my name, and Farmeye is a software company, and we were set up in 2017. We're all about mapping data for farmers. One of the more popular services that we're getting requested over the last couple of years would be for soil carbon analysis and mapping. There has been a growing interest in climate change and mitigation and how we can mitigate climate change, and farmers are lucky in that they have the opportunity right under their feet to store carbon, to pull carbon out of the atmosphere and put it into the ground. So what we do is, before we call to the farm to do the sampling, we would split the farm up into what are called carbon estimation areas. So essentially we're looking at the history of each field, so how it's been managed. So if there are two fields side by side with the same soil type, but one was a grazing field and the other was in tillage, we'd separate them out into separate carbon estimation areas and they'd be sampled separately. So we group the paddocks or the fields on the farm like that, and then typically we'll take one carbon sample for roughly every 5 hectares. Key to being able to monetize this carbon or to make value from it for the farmer is to be able to verifiably measure it. We need to come back here to the same square metre of ground next year and the year after and monitor that change in carbon in the soil over time. We use a series of technologies such as satellite mapping, GIS mapping and GPS sample recording. So we record down to the square centimetre where the location of the sample comes from in the field. The samples are all geotagged and barcoded, so they're dispatched to the laboratory with their own unique barcode, and we have full digital traceability all along the chain. Right now, today, a farmer needs to go to a voluntary carbon market to sell that carbon. Post 2030, it's expected that the carbon market will be incorporated into the CAP, into the Common Agricultural Policy, and will become part of some of the general farming schemes under CAP. So say you start at 200 tonnes per hectare last year, and next year you're at 210 tonnes per hectare in your field, you can sell the 10 tonne, the difference. And then the year after, if you increase by another 5, you can sell the 5, and so on. So every living thing is made up of carbon. The manure that's spread, the manure that comes from the grazing livestock, it all goes down, decomposes into the soil and becomes part of the carbon cycle. And from the farmer's point of view, positive farming practices will increase the level of carbon in the soil, and negative farming practices will decrease the level in the soil. So it's a win-win basically. What's good for the environment in terms of putting carbon into the soil, it's also good for the farmer and for the land and the farming system. Every living thing in the soil is composed of carbon. So your earthworms, your fungi, your little microbes, they're all part of the carbon cycle. Typically, long-term permanent pasture is where you'll find the highest levels of carbon in the soil. So for example, yesterday we were presenting results to a farmer. So he had sequestered 37,000 euros worth of carbon over the past year on a 100-hectare farm. We've been finding value in carbon at a CO2 equivalent price of about 50 euros per tonne. On most farms, the value of the carbon in the soil is worth more than the value of the stock in the yard.